Welcome to episode 4 of the DelightCast. As always, I'm your host K2T. And we've got loads of music for you today. Starting off with this ridiculously funky tune by the one and only Rush. This is called The Right Time, and it's out now for free, only on Delta 9 Recordings. Here we go. Coming up in today's show, we've got quite a few exclusives. We've got music from Dbrief, forthcoming on Riddim Records. Music from Henry, forthcoming Detached audio. As well as recent music from Liquid Lounge Records, celebrating their first year. And many other classics. Riddim Records, coming out on the 1st of March. This is the sounds of Dbrief with Soul Brothers. This is Restless, which is forthcoming on Detached Audio, 1st of March. Guest for this episode is the very talented Kinaes. They're a brand new duo that consists of Echo Motion and Enok from Basics Recordings. And I'm very lucky to say that we also have the very first interview for the DelightCast. As I've interviewed these guys, you'll hear that after their guest mix. Audio's backlog. It's by the very talented Martige and it's called Floating, released late last year. To celebrate their first birthday, the wonderful Liquid Lounge gave us a 10-track album, and this is my personal favourite. It's called Troubles and it's by Monument Banks. Out now for free, just go on their SoundCloud. More music from Dbrief, part of his EP on Riddim Records. This one is called Still Here. Big love to Ollie, this is such a good EP. Much love going out to Max Scott, Dan Hancocks and the rest of the Riddim gang. just one more tune, and then Kinaes will be in the guest mix for us, also known as Echo, Motion and Enok. They've just had a wonderful single out on Complex Records recently. Shoutouts to Mark Draves, aka Marcus T. Who wants to shout me out, so there you go. She is actually the artist who is responsible for the artwork for my Starscape EP as well as Renzori EP with Cyrus. She also wants to shout out that she is launching an artist page, so if you like her artwork, check her out. Also got a shout out from Jeroen Brzozowski. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. He also goes by the name of Toss T and just sent over a tune. It's a nice dance floor tune, so if you guys like that sort of stuff, check his work out. That was Toss T. Also a shout out to Nostre, who wanted to shout out that he's got a new EP out. You might recognize him from Influenza Media. Go check it out. 2 tracks called Autumn Winds and Mindscapes.
I feel it every kiss.
now time for our guys Kinaes to get into the guest mix for us. Get ready for a varied set from those guys. They're gonna play both sides of their single. They also have tunes by me and Silas, Rounder and Option, Nostre, Newtone, Caliber, and many more.
Who's this? Emergency garble signal. Let me hit that key. I've got to decode this message.
Of this cosmic communicator, we've been able to watch the Earth for many years. This is how we knew all about your experiments, Professor Darrow, and the moment you took off for the moon. Here, I'll tune it in on your launching site. You can see and hear what they're saying about your expedition.
time, well a time not that different to this one. Neither here nor there, but still nothing too distant. This stood the city of rain, city of injustice, city of pain. Living in this city, scarred concrete crevices, living like sewer rats screaming from the terraces. Evidence of decades of neglect amongst this urban deprivation, my Ellington step. Every day you hear a story to have you losing your breath. It's impossible not to feel its effects. This grey sprawling metropolis, water dripping off the twisted architectural mockeries, the sunlight blocking it, something to get us high fast copping it. Here love's a far distant memory, almost forgotten it. Don't know top, born knowing where the bottom is, also born knowing what rotten is, rotten is, rotten is.
Thanks to Kinaes for the last half an hour of a guest mix. It was a great set. As promised, if you stay tuned now, you can hear our interview that we had last week.
Living in the city, scarred concrete crevices.
Excuse the microphone quality, we had to resort to a Skype call.
Somehow some like-minded renegade types built a colony of webs like spiders. Low to the ground, can't find us. Far too often these blared city lights giving eyes blindness. What now? Flying round the world's where you'll find us. Repping rainy city, they're behind us. And it fills me with joy when I see my people's names on flyers. On the other side of the globe we fire. But baptized in water, amphibian, cross phoenix, live life in the gutter. But my weekends on the ceiling, is this too much truth we're revealing? Sometimes these memories, you just gotta steal them. Otherwise we'll be dreaming, almost lost meaning. This reality's more complex than it's seeming. But if you see him, tell him live happy ever after. My city it looks after, while building the next chapter. It's love.
So, we have Kinaes in the interview today. Welcome, guys. Can you please introduce yourselves? Whoever wants to go first, go.
You go first, Damien.
Yeah, my name's Damien. I also go by Enok. Nobody really calls me. You can just call me, Damien. But I'm from good old Suffolk, Virginia, small town here in the United States. This place is barren.
Nice.
Yeah, I produce, of course, I produce drum and bass, mainly liquid kind of style. Solo and with my buddy over here, Jack Perry, owner of Bass 6, as Kinaes.
And Jack?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Jack, obviously. I am one half of Kinaes. I also produce solo stuff as Motion. And I also run the drum and bass label Basics Recordings. So busy all the time.
Great stuff, people. So, obviously, Damien, you're from North America, and Jack, you're from England, just like myself. How did you guys actually come across each other? I guess, Damien, this would be more you, since I assume you had sent music to Basics.
Yeah, it was a complete accident. So I sent, I think this was like middle of summer of 2018. I had sent, because I've only been producing for about 4 years now. I haven't really been producing as long, and I'm kind of really stingy on my own kind of music, so I never really liked sending it anywhere. I had sent out, it was originally a couple of tunes called, and I forget, it sounds bad, but I forget the name of some of them. I know that for sure one of them was called Photos, and I believe it was 2 or 3 other songs that I had sent over to a couple labels, and I sent one to Jack's label, and I hadn't heard anything back, so I was like, okay, so it's just basically another no. And like almost a month later, I'm clearing out, I started getting really OCD about my, organizing my phone and my messages, calls, contacts, and emails. And I started clearing out my email, my of course, my musical email, Enoch email. And I was going through the spam, and like midway down the spam, I saw something from Base 6. I was like, what? So I go in there, and Jack had wanted the tunes, and I had already set them up to release originally with Elm Imprint. That unfortunately that ended up falling through. So I had sent Jack some new tunes. That's how we met. I sent him some new tunes. It was Beautiful Places, actually. And that's really, yeah, I appreciate it. I'd never gone through my spam. I would have never met Jack.
Nice twist of fate there, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I could have stayed in the spam bin, but here we are.
Yeah, it's nice to know you put you in the spam, isn't it, Jack?
Yeah, I swear I don't know how it got in there. I'm just like, that's weird. It's weird.
Yeah.
Turned out for the good, though, so that's great news. Jack, obviously, your Echo Motion, you're half of Kinaes, and you own Basics Recordings, which is doing amazingly from recent releases. You're very welcome. How do you manage all that? Because that is a lot of work. I assume you have a day job as well, so...
I do, yeah, full time. So generally speaking, a lot of the label stuff I tend to do in the evenings during the week, and I try and do a lot of stuff sort of ahead of when it's actually due, so that I can schedule things like on the marketing and setting the releases up. And then the weekends are sort of mine for music, all of my projects, and then it's just a case of, prioritising what needs to be done next.
Nice, good stuff there. And how did you two, because obviously I imagine once Damien sent over some tunes, you must have probably thought, okay, let's work on music together, and I assume you created a few tunes. When did you guys realise that you guys need to form a brand new duo with a brand new name, instead of just saying, here's some new tunes by Echo Motion and Enok?
I'm going to let Jack answer this one.
Yes, I mean, it was kind of a combination of a few things. Like, firstly, we sort of realised it was going to be quite a mouthful to try and say all those names at once. But also, I'd sort of been on a break from production myself for like a few years now. And I kind of realised that I needed a new name anyway, so it just made sense at the same time to do that, try and come up with a few, and we'd sort of, we'd get on something together.
Interesting.
Yeah, it kind of, funny enough, it started because it wasn't even, because we started talking, really just talking, like just, being friend to friend. And it was like, at one point, it was just like, dude, let's make some music. What are we doing? And that's exactly what we did. I sent him a tune called Boardwalk, which is releasing on here in 2 days. So make sure you grab that.
Played it in the mix. I heard it.
Yep. And I sent him that tune. Man, I think I sent that to you, Jack, in what was it, July? It was July or it was August. And then we had another tune called Winter, which I had started and I sent off to him. And we started drastically changing these tunes, and I gotta say, I'm happy with them. I'm happy with them. They're coming out on Complex Records here real shortly. So
at the time of airing, this would already be out, I believe. So congratulations.
Oh no, we've been caught.
No, yes. It's okay. The viewers will know that this was recorded earlier. It's all good.
Yeah. So viewers, make sure you pick that up. We love you.
Yes, it's out now.
But yeah, that's really how Kinaes really started. We were shifting through some different names and all that, and eventually that just popped up, and I was like, oh, that sounds actually pretty sweet. Let's use it.
What does that actually mean? Sorry.
Sorry, no, it's just I was going to say, like, a sort of fun fact, I guess, that originally when we were sort of brainstorming the names, it was going to be the other way around. So I'd sort of proposed it as though like Kinaes was going to be my solo project name and Echo Motion was going to be as it's like a duo, but we decided to flip it.
Okay, that makes sense. But like the name Kinaes, where does it come from? Because when I look at it, I see the word kin to mean family, but does it mean that? Does it mean something else?
Well, we're long lost brothers, so.
It makes sense now.
No, Jack, you can go ahead on that one.
And so like again, we were sort of just brainstorming like words and different things relevant to our the style we were going for. We sort of come across the word kinesthesia, which is essentially like the best way I can describe it is kind of like the sixth sense. So if you like close your eyes and moved your arm around, you'd still know where it was in relation to your body. So it's kind of knowing how things are in relation to your body through the various senses, and we thought that kind of, in a weird way, twisted quite well into our music. We wanted it to, you know, we've got our tunes playing or any tune playing, and you've got your headphones on, and it kind of takes you to this different place where you've got these different experiences and that. So
I like that. That's a great name. It's a very good name. I like that a lot.
thank you.
Appreciate that.
Speaking of emotions, both of you make very emotional music. I mean, Jack, you've had Lost Woods, I believe, to launch your Echo Motion alias. And then Damien, I know you've released Beautiful Places, you had Castles, and I know we're good friends, so I know you guys have some more music that is quite emotional. Where does the inspiration come from?
It's a great question, actually. That's a great question for any artist. Me personally, so I've had my ventures into, a musical journey. I started way back in, I believe I was in 5th grade when I started playing cello. And then it just sort of progressed on to bass, stand-up bass or double bass, bass guitar, and a little bit of keyboard and vocals. But after, and I sort of always knew what drum and bass was. I just didn't know at the time that's what it was called, or jungle music. And man, there was this tune called, it was by Fred V and Graphics. It was called Just a Thought. I heard that years. And I mean years ago. And I had that thing on repeat. I didn't know it was drum and bass at the time. So it just kind of skipped over my brain. Fast forward a couple years into the future. I actually started off with neurofunk, things like Audio Emperor. I had saw, I believe it was the 2013 Imagination Festival on YouTube for Emperor. I think it was 2013, and I was like, "Whoa, I got to get into this." So I started learning how to DJ. I picked up, a couple of Newmark NDX 500s and the Newmark M3 mixer, and I was just like, I had no idea what I was doing. Started mixing that a bit, and then I finally came across what was Liquid Drum and Bass. And that's sort of the moment I kind of fell in love with drum and bass, and I listened to drum and bass almost exclusively. And I don't know where the it's hard to describe where that emotion comes from personally when I'm making music. I tell you, first and foremost, I'm not the person that can rush it. It can, like Castles took me a couple years to make. Like on and off, I would stop for a while of making it, then I would go back to it. And I think I could do more to it, but that's just personally speaking, personal preference. But it's hard to describe where that actual emotion comes from. I don't know if it's something I've always had within or something that you just accrue. It's that, man, I just... When
I imagine for different styles that you make, emotion comes from different places, maybe memories and such.
Yeah. So I have 2 new tunes coming out with a friend of mine. His name is Brandon Mathis, and he's very good at keyboard. And we have 2 tunes coming very, very soon. Hint, hint. But those 2 tunes, I would say, are probably, I guess you could probably the more emotional tunes I've made. Like when it comes to future releases, they're probably going to be quote unquote the more emotional tunes. When I make music, or when I listen to any form of music, I always think of a story. Like, what does that sound remind me of in the real world? Like, what kind of story can I put that with? And when I'm thinking of a story, that's how I make tunes. Like, yeah, you have your skill, you have your creativity and all that, but like when I make music, I like to think of, I guess, like movies that I make in my head, like stories that I make in my head. That's really where the emotion comes from.
I know what you mean by that. I know what you mean. I do the same thing, actually.
It's because everyone has their own creative process, right? And whether it's similar or not, that's really what mine comes down to. Is just there's no like set rules on to make music. You just make it and either sounds good or maybe it doesn't.
Exactly that. Jack, how about you? Where does your inspiration come from for your tunes? Both past and as Echo Motion, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like as Damien said, there's a really good question. I think for me, I've never really been someone, even though I've always been sort of involved with music, I've never really been someone for words and songwriting in terms of lyrics and things like that. So I was always sort of gravitated more towards the electronic styles of music, things like drum and bass and that, where you can have this sort of raw emotion without actually having to say what it is. Well, you know, in terms of like a lot of... Yeah, exactly, yeah. Like in terms of like a lot of pop music, 5 words in, you kind of know where it's going. But with the sort of styles of music that we're all involved in, it like Damien said, it can go anywhere. And any sort of tiny little thing can trigger different emotions for all sorts of different people. So I think for me it's not so much about telling a story as much as setting a scene. And I think the scene for me kind of stays the same throughout the track, but you can change all these different things throughout it, and I think that's where sort of my inspiration comes from, I suppose, is all these different kinds of music that I listen to. And it's more just kind of like a raw feeling. It's not something that I do tend to think about. It's odd. That's a really good question.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that too, because when I say I'm listening to a new Liquid tune that just came out, I think I want to know where that tune places me. So I think of like a movie scene from a movie that I've seen, and if that's usually where music helps me, it puts me in my place. I'll put it that way.
So in essence, it's almost like you're creating a new soundtrack to the movie scene you have in your head.
Yeah, similar to that way, exactly. Because you don't need vocals to tell you, like to tell you the story of a song. Sometimes the sounds do all that work for you.
Yep, music can speak 1,000 words. So
yeah.
Very good. So obviously, at the time of airing, this is now out, but at the time we're actually having this talk, this single is 2 days away, am I right? 22nd?
Yeah, yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't you guys talk about that? It's on Complex Records, Winter and Boardwalk, which you played both in the mix. Who wants to start off on that one?
Jack, take it away, my man.
Thank you. Yeah, they're both sort of fairly similar Liquid tracks. I'd say Winter's probably a more standard Liquid track when you think about it. Boardwalk's got that little bit more like funk to it. We did a bit more creative stuff with the second drop, which you'll hear if you
those drums.
You listen to it. Thank you.
That was all Jack. That second part, yeah.
No. But yeah, so it's interesting, really. They're sort of the first 2 full projects that we worked on as Kinaes, and to see them come out on such a good label it's obviously a great feeling for us.
Oh, yeah.
As Damien said, they kind of thanks. But as Damien said, they sort of started off as these sketches that he already had. I really liked where they were going, and kind of wanted to be a part of it, I suppose. I didn't really want to change anything or make this different or anything like that, but I had like sort of these ideas running through my head like I used to when I used to make music, and sort of tying into how Kinaes started. I'd say that's how most of our tracks start, to be honest. Damien's quite good at coming up with these different ideas and chucking stuff together and making these sketches, and then we sort of I kind of jump on it from there and progress these, flesh them out a bit, and then it goes back and forth, and that's literally exactly what happened with those tunes.
Yeah, Jack is absolutely right. And funny enough, this is almost everybody, right? Like you get on the desktop, and either you already have a plan, or you're kind of messing around with some samples, and it's like, oh, well, this sounds pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So that's, and I tend to incorporate a lot of like things from like real world, just recordings from the real world, like background things, things like birds, trees brushing against each other, just the wind, And that's really how a lot of my tunes start off, as with those aspects in it. And in fact, Winter and Boardwalk will feature a lot of that, especially Winter. Boardwalk is more of like sort of like that feel-good tune, right? While having like something for, say, Winter, which is more of like that emotional kind of journey, so to speak. And the way I go about starting tunes, especially with Kinaes, is I'm trying to figure out a good way to phrase it. It's sort of like you go in with a plan, and I'm not gonna lie, and this is probably almost everybody. When you go in with a plan, things don't always go according to plan, right? You start adding new things in, and eventually your plan, like you've deviated so far from the plan, but you like the direction that you're going. So that's really how I start my music. That's how I start any Kinaes tune or any Enok tune, for that matter. It's just, oh, that sounds cool, I'm gonna put in a song.
Yeah, and I think, like, touching on that, I think that's why the whole project works so well, because when I sort of start a tune personally, as I said, with like setting the scene, I like to work a lot with like pads and sort of atmospheric sounds. Not so much the real world sounds that Damien uses, but again, that's why it works. But obviously, when a sketch sort of comes over from Damien, there's already something there, and for me, like that's the hardest part for me. So when something comes over and it's already there and there's things going on, the cogs sort of start turning in my head, and then we can jump on it, and that's sort of how it gets going. But it works so well.
It's like an overall vibe. That's really what it comes down to. Is the vibe.
I hope you just catch on to that same vibe.
You got it.
Very, very much. Jack, so you've obviously not released music for a long time, or not been working on music, because I'm aware that before you were Echo Motion, you were actually Ampix.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Someone did research.
How did you know?
So what came, obviously, since you had a break from Ampix and became Echo Motion, what inspired you to get back into the studio? Was it work with Damien, or what your artists on Base 6 were doing, or maybe meeting new friends? What happened?
So essentially a melting pot of everything you just mentioned. I do owe a lot to Damien. I tell him all the time. He was a massive sort of inspiration in me jumping back into that seat and getting on music. This sort of production tended to slope off as Base 6 started around 5 years ago. So it made sense that I took time away from the music to actually focus on that and get that running. And yeah, it just sort of became a case of that got to a really good place where it was almost just ticking over by itself, and that allowed me a bit more time to jump back in. But yes, some of the releases we've had have just absolutely blown me away. As music does, there's some tunes that you hear and you think, I'll just give up. I'll just pack it in now. But again, there's others that really do motivate you to get back. And again, with Damien sending me those tunes for Base 6, and then the sketches, it all just it just felt right. The timing felt right. I hadn't sort of previously, I was quite happy taking a step back from it before. But yeah, the time just felt right to get back into it, and here we are.
Damien, any words on that? He just called you an inspiration.
Yeah, no, he does tell me all the time, and I really do appreciate it. Funny enough, I'm probably the most... I say thank you a lot, even when I probably shouldn't say thank you a lot. I even apologize a lot when I shouldn't really be there'll be something, I'll say a lot oh, dude, sorry to hear that. And they're like, why are you apologizing? It's like, well, I don't know, because that just sucks. Things like that. Yeah, like I said, Jack's told me many times, I do really appreciate that, man. It means a lot. Anytime anybody, when it comes to when you're making music, my first thought in my head is I need this to sound good for me, right? If I don't like it, I don't really expect anybody else to like it. So when I'm making music, I need to make sure that I am 100% backing my own tune. If you want to make good tunes, you have to and maybe this isn't true, I don't know, maybe it's different for everybody, but when you want to make a good tune, it has to be personal. It's like, I made that for me.
Yeah, you've got to believe in your music.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. And like I said, when it comes to Kinaes, it just sort of, I can't think of any other way to put it than it just sort of happened.
But the moment was right.
No,
Everything came together.
Yeah, it just literally it out of nowhere. It's like, dude, you want to make some music together? And he's like, yeah. And it's like, cool, we're making music together.
Speaking of making music together, so you've got Echo Motion, you've got Enok, you've got Kinaes, there's Basics. What can you tell us about the future? Any exclusive news for our DelightDNB fans? or anything you guys are doing, either individually or together, or Jack, even with the label?
That's on you, Jack.
Or
Sure,
you, Damien, you can take it.
Yeah, you've got projects.
Yeah, so I have 2 tunes with my buddy Brandon. He goes by Mathis. He mainly does he's an astounding musician. He mainly does live music, keyboard and bass are his main things. And I mean, this gentleman, like, wow. And I know him from high school, and he had hit me up wondering a little bit about production, and then he came over with his keyboard and we started playing around a bit, and I showed him, okay, this is drum and bass, and he's like, oh dude, I like this, right? So he started playing some keys to it, and I was like, wait a minute, play that again. And that's when we came up with a tune called quote unquote Ideas. It's not a very long tune, and personally I don't think it needs to be any longer than what it actually is right now. It's mainly an ensemble of just piano, really, and then you have just drums and some sax in the background. And we also, to accompany that one, we have a tune called Something for You, which it's mainly more, that tune is a straightforward one. It's sort of your standard 4.5 minute long tune. Very simplistic, really simplistic tune, actually. But that one is more of, I guess you could say, it's like a sequel to Ideas. It's meant to accompany it, and that's a nice little single that that'll eventually be coming to Basics.
Very nice, very nice. And Jack?
Ooh, where do I start? I didn't mean to come out so patronising, but no, yeah, I mean,
I've got all these projects.
Oh dear. No, we've got a few more Kinaes things in the works. Always. We've got a remix that we're working on that we're both really, really excited about for a very, very interesting label.
Well, yeah, I've heard about this.
Yeah.
I wonder.
Keep that one under wraps for a little bit.
That's right.
Yeah, no, we're super excited about that. I've got a sort of number of solo bits in the works as well. Nothing set in stone yet, but a couple of remixes again I'm really excited about for, again, a very interesting label.
I wonder who that is.
And yeah, in terms of Basics, we've got quite a lot lined up actually. Next release drops on the 1st of March, and that's 2 tracks from Excuse Me, who now goes by Karma Kingdom, but these are old tracks that were on Figment Records. They've basically gone under. They don't exist anymore. So all of the artists got their music back essentially and could decide what they wanted to do with it. So we picked up 2 tracks from Excuse Me. They'll be coming out soon. After that, we've got a release from a brand new producer. I won't drop too many details yet, but that's exciting. That's a little bit different to what we normally do. Again, yeah, we've got Enok and Mathis in the pipeline, and we've also got a remix project coming out. First ever remix single on Basics, with some very, very interesting artists on board for that. And that will be a Fear Bass remix single.
Very good.
But that's all I will tease so far on that.
such a tease for our fans. Well, listen, guys, this has been great fun. The only last thing I'll ask of you guys is if you could sign off this episode for me.
Yes, absolutely.
Whoever wants to start.
I just really do appreciate you having us on here, man. And, you know,
absolute pleasure.
This is... Making music was not in the game plan at all. Like, in my life, that was not in the game plan. I even remember the first time I bought I think it was the producer pack. It was like $100 package for FL Studio. I believe it was 12 at the time. And I had no idea what I was doing. I'm not going to lie. I was like, whoa, what is all this? And, you know, of course, then Enok started off. This all just kind of jumped off. And then I got to meet you two fine gentlemen, which was really awesome. You all have been extremely kind to me, especially for not really producing music for that long. I think I've only been producing now 4 years maybe. And you guys have tremendously helped me out. And anybody who listens to my music, seriously, thank you. It really does mean a lot to me. Like, I don't care about any sort of likes or anything like that. Just appreciate you checking me out. Thank you.
That was nice and sweet. And Jack, any last words?
I'm not dying.
I'm so sorry.
Dang, I thought that's what this was. Okay.
I didn't mean it like that.
Oh man, right. And yeah, no, as Damien said, like, thank you for having us on. Like, it has been a pleasure. Can we do shout outs?
Yeah, of course. Shout out whoever you want.
Awesome. Yeah, so obviously, shouts to you two, you're here. Shouts to Detached,
Yes.
obviously.
We're here.
Yes.
Yep.
K2T.
Snaky one there. But yeah, they've loads and loads of interesting stuff coming out there really, really soon. On top of what's already come out. I mean, if you're listening, you should know of them, but if not, obviously get right on that. Shout outs to Fearbase, because he's just been awesome in the last sort of year or so, helping with running the label. A lot of behind the scenes stuff that sort of people don't see, but yeah, no, he's been awesome. Shout to Josh Arnold, who also does a lot of our artwork. Shouts to Karma Kingdom. I think that's it.
And just one last note: if you're gonna make music, if you're gonna do any art, remember, do it for yourself.
Very, very true. And on that note, that has been episode 4 of the DelightCast. I've been K2T. They've been Kinaes. Next month we have Hex in the guest mix and the interview. Thanks for listening.